Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Melanie Sims. I'm a principal planner with the town. I'm here with staff members from several other departments, and our role tonight is to support you through this discussion. Our primary goal tonight is to hear from you, and I'll be helping by facilitating the meeting. So with that said, if everybody is able to, please turn on your camera because we want to help everyone get to know each other. And so to start with off, we're going to do some introductions. And to help with introductions, I'm going to launch a quick poll. So just one moment and you'll see it come up on your screen if you'll go ahead and respond. It's a very serious question with tomorrow being Valentine's. If you want to scroll down past the pictures, you can choose your favorite Valentine's candy. All right, looks like almost everyone got there, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. A lot of people on this call who are near to my heart and like chocolate, so. All right, so now you can close the poll. We want to do introductions. So if you chose the assorted chocolate boxes, if those are your favorite, or assorted candy boxes, please go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you'll say your name and how long you've lived here or in Oro Valley or anything else you want to share about yourself.
I'll go first. My name's Robert Asante. I've been in Oro Valley for 7 years. And interestingly enough, like when I first traveled out to Tucson many years ago, we actually stayed at the Westward Look. And I remember just driving down Oracle and nothing was out here 24 years ago. And I just remembered saying, I'm never going to live there. And well, here we are. So it's interesting. I'll give you that.
Thank you, Robert. Who else chose assorted candy boxes? Maureen?
Yes, hi, I'm Maureen Savigny. I've been in Oro Valley almost 2 years, so I'm a newbie. And I used to work for M&M Mars Candy, so I won't pick any of the ordinary candies at this point. Although they did have a very good process for making chocolate, but not my favorite at this point.
Very nice. Rosa?
Hi, I'm Rosa Daly. I've lived here I'm in my 19th year and love that chocolate.
Okay, and James, you're unmuted.
James Stacy, we're escapees from Southern California. We've been here 3.5 years, love it. We do go back to the coast, got friends and relatives, granddaughter, grandson, but this is a fabulous place to live.
All right, is everybody for the chocolate or assorted candy box? I know we kind of mix those two. All right. How about the folks that like the sweet and sour candy? If you want to unmute yourself. No one on. All right, what about, oh, oh, there you go.
I'll go. My name is Jennifer Akins. I don't live in Oro Valley, but I work for Golden Ranch Fire District. I am the fire marshal right now, and I've been with the district for just about 15 years.
Yeah. Marshall?
So I'm Sergeant Marshall Morris with the Oro Valley Police Department. I do live in Oro Valley. Other than for a 1-year period, I've been here every year since 1999. And I've been with the Oro Valley Police Department for just under 20 years.
Thank you. Eric?
My name is Eric Perry. I'm an assistant chief with Golden Ranch Fire District in charge of community risk reduction. I grew up in Oro Valley. I do not live here anymore. I live over Graycroft, but my parents still live in Oro Valley, and obviously I am working. Been with Golder for about 9 years.
Thank you. Sharon, so you kind of raise your hand.
So I was one of those anything chocolate. So I thought we skipped over that, but that's okay.
You're good.
I moved back to Oro Valley in June after being gone for 4 years. Before that, I was here for 2 years living in La Reserve, and I absolutely love Oro Valley. I don't know why I ever left in the first place. I just want to give a shout out to our mayor, Mayor Winfield. You've done a marvelous job. I'm so happy that this town is doing so well. And I share your love of cities. I'm a former mayor. I'm also a former member of the local government committee in the Minnesota House of Representatives and the local government committee in the Minnesota Senate. So I escaped Minnesota and I'm finding my happy place in Oro Valley, Arizona, and I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. All right, anybody else with chocolate boxes, sweet and sour?
Hi, my name's Justin Mantell. My wife and I moved here coming up on 4 years ago at the end of the month. We actually lived here very briefly in 2005 for about 6 months, but we finally made our way back here in early 2021. She should be on the call as well. It's Justin Mantell, and then my wife is Mary Monell. So it's close, but different last name.
Great, yeah, I do think she just joined. We'll give her a moment. All right, what about our diehard Valentine's Day candy folks who like the little conversation hearts that I know I loved them when I was a kid. Anybody, are those their favorite? All right, Jennifer?
Oh, sorry. Okay, Emily, I love the sweetheart candy, Jennifer McMahon. I have been in Oro Valley probably close to 15 years now, but I can't believe nobody likes the sweethearts.
Emily?
Okay, sorry for jumping in. Okay, I have to out myself. I did not respond to the poll. My husband is late and I am on mom duty doing dinner and trying to attend a Zoom meeting at the same time. So anyways, my name is Emily. This is my son, Adam, who is sitting right next to me. We've been in Oro Valley since 21. Love it here. It's a great place to live. And I'm pretty sure a few of you firefighters were at my house on Christmas Eve a few years back when our fire alarms would not stop going off. So hello again. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Emily. And yeah, if you didn't respond to the super serious poll question, please don't worry about it. So I'll call on those that I think may have haven't had a chance to go yet. So Margot, if you want to introduce yourself.
I am similarly on single mom duty, with phones ringing and finishing dinner. Yeah, I'm Margot. I moved here about a year ago from Minnesota. I'd been living in Duluth for many years. And what else was I supposed to say? Anything else in particular?
Nope, whatever you'd like to share.
Cool. Yeah, I'm here in Oro Valley and I'm here with 2 kids who are 5 and 10 and moved here to be closer to my parents and have enjoyed it way more than I thought I might. I grew up in northern Arizona and I didn't really want to ever move back to Arizona, but I've been very pleasantly surprised and excited to be a part of this group.
Thank you. Let's see, Ruth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm out at 24-hour hop, which is at 24 hours in Oak Pueblo. It's a 24-hour mountain bike race, so my connection is not great. But anyway, my name is Ruth Cañamar, and I've lived in Oro Valley since 2001, and I work at the Arizona Cancer Center. full-time in compliance, but in clinical trials. But I love mountain biking, and so I volunteer for the Sonoran Desert Mountain Bicyclists Organization, and so we're a nonprofit, and the vice president for that organization, and I'm here representing the group. But we're very much interested in safety, of course, but we're also very much interested in trails. So that's my interest in being on this committee.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Let's see, Mary. Mary Monell, and if you may have to unmute yourself. We can come back to Mary. Stephen, I don't know if we heard from you yet.
Nope, not yet. I am Stephen Woodall. I've been a resident of Oro Valley since 2000, so almost 25 years coming up this May. Have a couple of homes up here, so yep. Also very interested in trails and safety, and I spent a lot of time out there on the trails and roads running around the town. So we actually, my wife and I in 2020 during the pandemic, we ran every single street in Oro Valley. So.
Oh, thank you. All right, and Mary, I think you're unmuted now.
Yes, sorry about that.
Nope, it's okay.
Mary Monell. I have lived in Oro Valley since 2021. I am also interested in trails, and I also cycle, so I'm definitely interested in road and traffic safety as well.
Great, thank you. And then, is that everyone? Everybody moves around on my screen. If you didn't have a chance to introduce yourself, if you please unmute and go ahead.
I'm Pam Curran. Oh, sorry.
Hi, Pam. Yep, you're good.
This is like, I have managed to avoid Zoom most of the last 5 years, if you can believe this. So I really have very little idea of what I'm doing with the screens. I'm a snowbird convert. We bought down here in 2020 and moved here full time in 2021 from Minnesota. We got tired of the winters, and here we are. I am also a cyclist and a hiker, so I'm interested in the trails and safety on the roads, things of that nature.
Great, thank you. And I do appreciate, yeah, everyone jumping onto a Zoom call. I know it's not always easiest for folks, but it definitely makes it accessible so everyone can participate. So we really appreciate it. I think Maris, we're doing introductions, Maris, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us who you are.
Hello, I am an 8th grade student at Basis Oro Valley, and I'm doing Oro Valley Path Forward to help make improvements in the Oro Valley community and address certain issues.
Great, well, thank you for joining.
Of course.
Right. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now I'm going to have some staff that weren't able to introduce themselves go ahead and introduce themselves. So we'll start with Mike.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Gracie with the Oro Valley Police Department. I'm a commander, currently assigned to the Support Services Division within the department. I've been an officer for just under 19 years. I'm from Tucson. I grew up on the east side. I don't live in Oro Valley, but I'm right outside, so close enough to call it an easy drive into work. And I've spent the majority of my career policing this community, so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And Renee?
Hello, everybody. My name's Renee Olvera. I'm a senior planner with the town of Oro Valley, and I'm working on this general plan with Melanie, and I'm very excited to hear all of your ideas today.
And of course, Joe, I apologize. Mayor Winfield, I didn't mean to skip over you.
Hey, Melanie. Joe Winfield, and thank you, Sharon, for those kind words. I'm incredibly impressed by these moms that are juggling children and dinners and have joined this meeting. So my hat's off to each of you. And Myris, thank you for joining this, or Miris, I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly. We moved to Oro Valley in 1996. At the time, our oldest son was a sophomore at CDO. Our youngest son had not been born yet. We essentially raised our family here. We have 6 sons and a daughter. And for those Minnesotans, we have our daughters in Ramsey, Minnesota, and we're headed that way in a week or so to celebrate her 40th birthday. And all the mentioning about trails, that's pretty close to my heart. And Melanie may say something, but we do have a trails master planning process that's underway. And so I'd welcome your participation in that as well. So thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. All right, I just have a couple slides to go through, but then we're going to jump into the conversation. Again, tonight, we mostly want the time to be your time and to hear from you. But just to give us a little background before we get started. Pull up some slides. So tonight's meeting really is to gather additional guidance and ideas related to the priorities that residents shared last year. And that's related to safety, not town finances and services. But the agenda for tonight was really set by what you guys provided online. So we're going to talk about the things that you value about public safety in Oro Valley that should be maintained in the future. We're then going to talk about traffic safety, crime, and we'll wrap up with emergency preparedness. Now, the information you provide tonight will be paired with what we heard last year during phase 1 from residents, as well as the legal requirements, and that's what will be used to form draft goals, policies, and actions. So how are we going to do all this? The main task for a 10-year plan is making sure that the goals, policies, and actions are prescriptive enough to address resident priorities and expectations, but also broad enough to stay relevant for 10 years. So please keep that in mind as we go through our discussion about this macro level approach that the 10-year plan takes. The comments, again, from tonight's discussion and that you posted online, they're going to be consolidated to form those goals, policies, and actions. So our next meeting will focus on building consensus on those items. So first, just a quick overview of what we heard last year with related to public safety. A caveat or something I want to mention is that the percentages shown on the screen, they represent responses to a statistically projectable survey. So what that means is when you see a percentage like 85% think Oro Valley should be known as a low crime community, that really represents 33,000 Oro Valley adults. Now, the survey responses were also put together with comments that people provided online last year, as well as at over 90 events throughout the community. And they were used to craft the draft guiding principle, which is shown to your right. This information was also the basis we used to pose the questions and discussion that we will have this evening, because your help really is needed to provide further understanding of what these responses mean for the community. So just some quick background information I wanted to share before we get into discussion. So when it comes to traffic safety, what's shown on this screen are the top 11 intersections with the most incidents over 2024. But something important to take into context when we're looking at incidents isn't just the total number of traffic incidents, but also how much traffic is going through those intersections at any given time. And that's where your accident ratio is on the right-hand side of the screen, highlighted in yellow. So really anything over a 1 kind of lets the town know, hey, we need to look into that more, see what's going on. The crime rates for this, when we get into the crime discussion, the crime rates are shown on the left-hand side of the screen. But really the importance when it comes to maintaining a low crime rate, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, is it takes the whole community. It's an ecosystem, if you will. So residents, schools, businesses, police, and even the courts all have to work together to make sure our crime rate stays low. So we'll be walking through that ecosystem this evening as well. Then in regards to emergency preparedness, on the screen is ways that the town prepares for flooding and wildfires. I do want to take a moment here because I did notice online there were quite a bit of questions about what the town does do in these areas. For flooding, we regulate floodplains, participate with other jurisdictions for monitoring and then have response teams. And some of you may be familiar about the sandbag program that happens during the monsoon season, as well as preparedness. And then also working a lot with HOAs because some of the washes are privately owned. When it comes to wildfire preparation, as you just saw, we do have some of our Golder Ranch Fire online tonight to help with any questions, but there is a wildland station that's manned 24 hours with different, with at least 2 members and equipped for immediate dispatch if needed. There's also partnerships as well within the Golder Ranch Fire District and experts for if there is a wildfire. They also use drones and other items to make sure that we have all eyes out there. And then their team is also members of other response teams to get multi-level experience. There's also the alert system Code Red. If you aren't familiar with that, that also helps when there's any emergency in Oro Valley. And then lastly, both OVPD as well as Golder Ranch Fire have some prevention and education programs. I know we'll talk a little bit more about the types of programs that you all want to see in the community or that you appreciate in the community as well tonight. So just some housekeeping items before we get started is for those of you who are on the online kickoff event, you are familiar with the Zoom whiteboard. We will be using this for the rest of the evening. I do understand that for it is sometimes difficult to see the whiteboard, so I just want to go through a quick tutorial of how you can adjust your view. When you adjust your view, it doesn't change it for anybody else, so you can make it as big or as small as you prefer. What you're going to want to do is look for that. It's a navigation menu. It's going to be in your lower right-hand corner. It's outlined on this screen in red. It has the magnifying functions to make things bigger or smaller. Also a hand function. If you click on the hand, you can move around the board. And again, it doesn't move it for anybody else so that you can follow along. There's also the fit to screen option if you next to the magnifying glass to kind of give you the bigger picture. I do want to also mention, though, if you're unable to follow along on the whiteboard, please don't let that preclude you from participating. As long as you're staying in the topic we're all discussing, you can unmute and share your ideas, and we'll make sure they're scribed and get on the board. And then lastly, before we start our conversation, I just want to remind folks of the ground rules that were accepted during the kickoff event. We really need everyone's help to make sure that this meeting is efficient and productive. We have a fair amount to get through tonight, so I just ask that people stay focused on the category or column we're talking about, and then we'll definitely get through everything and have opportunity to hear from everyone. And just a reminder to be respectful, even if you don't agree with somebody's comments. We want to make sure that this is a safe place for everyone to voice their opinions and ideas. So with that, let's get into it. I'm going to share a whiteboard. And I know right now will be very big, or you won't be able to read anything yet on the screen, but I just want to take a moment to first thank all of you for doing the online homework that you posting your responses online. We put them all on the whiteboard already. So as you can see, by doing that online, you were able not only to provide probably more than we get if we all just showed up in person and used sticky notes, but also your comments were really thoughtful. And so that we appreciate that. For tonight, again, we're going to start off in this yellow column, which is things that you guys mentioned you value and want to maintain. Where they're going to head over to traffic safety to talk about enforcement, safe driving, school zones, things of that nature. We'll then go to crime and look at that ecosystem. What can be done to help support courts, OVPD, schools, businesses, and then community to help maintain a low crime rate. And again, we'll wrap up with emergency preparedness. So I'm going to zoom my screen in onto the things that you guys mentioned you value. Again, please use that navigation menu in the lower right-hand corner to help if you need to zoom in or if you need to pan around. So with this one, it starts with a number 1, We have a fair amount of comments in here. So I just want to ask the group, first take a moment to look at the comments, and then also want to make sure, oops, there we go. Sorry, just trying to fix this one. Take a moment to read through the comments. You may have to move it down a little. But first, I just want to ask folks, is there any anything you want to add? So I see that things that are valued are the quick response to calls, visibility is a big thing, being present at schools and education resources, law on visibility. But is there anything folks want to add or anything you want to discuss further or have questions about? And please feel free to raise your hand or unmute and speak freely. I know some folks are still reading. Or if you put a comma on here and you want to add some more context, please do.
Millie, this may very well be a question more than anything. There's a comment in here about demographics, about older and more upscale, visible, responsive police force. I'm just curious, what are the demographics? What's the percentage breakout? Because that's relevant, I think, to a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so just and I don't know if Mike's on the call, if he wants to give more, doesn't look like it, more context, but I can answer that. Just one moment. Let me get the report up. All right, so right now, Oro Valley, and these numbers are from the 2020 census, so they're probably a little bit different now. But our student population, which is our 0 to 24, is 23% of the population. Our what we title as workforce, which is your 25 to 64-year-olds, is 42%. And then older adults, which are 65 plus, are 35% of the population.
Well, so I guess we're not a senior community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a lot of senior communities here that live here, but I think it sounds like we're pretty balanced and growing as a community that welcomes people of all ages, and I'm really glad to see that. Sure, it's a great place to retire. I'm here. I love retiring here. But I also love seeing people of all ages around me. And I know that everybody has a different set of needs. And I think we have to pay attention to that, not just focus on one demographic.
Thank you. And I am scribing your responses down. After this meeting, we'll send out this whiteboard to everybody to make sure we captured everything correctly. All right. So in relation to keeping a low crime rate, other than high visible police force and quick response rates from first responders, are there other things that you think is being done well that should be maintained into the future? Emily?
Okay, I have done so many Zooms and I just forgot how to unmute myself.
Okay.
Whoa, what a moment. I was just gonna say, like, I have had personal interactions with our police force, not in bad ways, but just like we were out of town and my garage opened and I called and they just came over to my house and helped me make sure that my house was secure. And I love that about living in Oro Valley because I feel like even though it's a lot of people, I feel like I am cared for by the services here. And I feel like if I was really in need, they would show up. In fact, when I was touring my home, our alarm went off and they showed up like in minutes. And so I have always known living here that those services would be there for me when I needed it, and have always been that way. And it's really important to me that I continue to live in a community where I feel like that. I don't know how you do that, but I like it.
Thank you. So I put interactions with police are positive. There's a lot of care and community engagement. That helps wrap up. Anyone else before we go to the next column? All right, so the next column, we got a fair amount of comments about traffic safety. And I know this is most people's top choice of what they want to talk about tonight. So there are comments that appreciate the visibility, but would like to see more visibility, especially when it comes to speeders, and it looks like red light runners. So there, again, there's a good amount of comments there, so please scroll around as you need. But does anybody want to start us off with this conversation? So anything to add, any questions, if you want to also just talk about the comment you already put on so everybody's aware of it, that would be helpful.
I guess I have a question. Are there red light cameras in Oro Valley? I guess that's something I don't know.
Sure. I will ask Sergeant Morris, are there red light cameras?
No, we don't have any red light cameras in the town of Oro Valley. We don't have any speed cameras either. All of our traffic enforcement is done by officers on the ground. We don't have any automated ones for that.
Margot, is that something that you were interested in seeing in the future in Oro Valley, or?
I guess I was just curious, just because there were a few comments that mentioned, or there was one that said something about red light cameras, and I was under the impression there weren't any, so I was just making sure I understood that correctly.
Does anybody else want to have thoughts about red light cameras or speed enforcement cameras?
Are they even legal in Arizona? I know at one time they weren't, so I don't know if
Good
they
question. Sergeant Morris, do you want to?
They're not technically illegal. They're just extremely hard to enforce. Getting good pictures, proving who was behind the wheel. There's a lot of issues with it, and the public really, really doesn't like it.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
across there was a lot of stuff that got taken out. So there are no more cameras, red light cameras or speed cameras down here that I'm aware of. I think even county got rid of theirs as well. I think Mike can back me up on that one. I think I don't know of any that are in Southern Arizona at all. So
Yeah, I don't believe there's any. Don't quote us on that. We certainly don't have them up here. They're not common, if at all present in the city. It kind of came down to not a legality issue, but like Sergeant Morris was talking about, is how do you actually deliver civil service on a civil infraction? And there's just so many questions in it. And to make assumptions in that arena would sort of trample some rights here and there. So that's why people don't like them that much. They sound like a good idea, a scare tactic almost, but when the rubber meets the road, it makes court messy.
All right. Rosa?
Yeah, I just want to say, I feel a marked difference when I'm driving in Oro Valley versus like River Road. So I think we're already doing a really good job here. I just want to say that. Like when people, I see a lot of the comments and I respect them. Trust me, I respect them. But I feel like when I go back east and start driving, I'm just like, oh my God, I just feel the difference, aggressive driving, don't dare change the lane at the wrong time. And here, I just feel like Oro Valley's pretty like laid back. I mean, I do see an occasional, situation that I wished maybe one of you guys would see, but truthfully, like I said, just going from here down to like River Road and back, you know, you just feel a huge difference in Oro Valley. I really think for the most part, we have pretty safe situation going on here, and to your guys' credit. And you pulled my daughter over the other day, and I want to thank you profusely for that. I have a daughter who is just brilliant, but she has a lead foot, and she has a time management problem. And so I've been working on that with her, and I think it's done now. She was pretty shaken up. It was just a warning, but she's a perfectionist. But she's done. She's now leaving when she needs to, and she's not speeding anymore. And I want to thank you profusely for that. It's something a parent cannot do, you know, but you took care of it for me. So yeah.
Thank you, Rosa. Margot and then Mary.
Yeah, okay, so this was definitely one of my impetuses, is that the plural, of joining this. I have a very different perspective. Like I said, moved here from sort of small town Minnesota, and driving here really, really scares me. And I have a 10-year-old daughter, and the thought of her driving in 6 years is like, at this moment, if it was the same traffic situation in 6 years as it is today, I don't know that I'll actually let her, without me in the car at least. And so that's a major concern for me. I get anxious even like tonight, one of my parents is taking her over to chorus class, and every time she's in the car without me, it's like, I really hope she doesn't get hit by someone running a red light. So we've had a few close calls actually, even in the year living here, and I don't drive. We actually don't drive a whole lot. So it's felt pretty concerning to me. And I guess a question I have is, or maybe an idea to add to the mix, I don't think I saw it on here, was like, how can civilians be helpful? There have been a couple cars where, couple drivers where they were driving so recklessly and so erratically that I did call in, and was met with like really, awesome response. Whoever answered was like, yeah, thank you for calling. We'll send someone over to see if we can find that person and like make them stop driving like that. But without having my like 10-year-old in the car who can like snap a picture of their license plate, it's sort of like, what can we do? So I guess that's a question or line of thought that I wanted to share.
And tonight we may not have solutions, but that's definitely something I put on the board, and we can put in the goals, policies, and actions of what we want to work on for the future. There were a fair amount of comments about aggressive driving, so we'll definitely touch on that more in a moment too. So thank you. Mary, and then Robert.
I'm not sure if this is the right place, but I was curious on the stats with the accidents in the intersections. Have they done any studies or taken a look to see why those particular intersections, or if there's anything that can be done in those intersections to make them safer?
Sure. So I do know we have another working group who's also looking at traffic and transportation. So actually the intersections that came up in that chart were discussed by them as well. So but in terms of what previous studies have done, I don't know, Sergeant Morris, do you know anything that OVPD has done to look at, say, Oracle and McGee or any of those intersections?
Yeah, we hit a lot of those things. Most of our collisions ultimately come down to two things: impatient drivers and inattentive drivers. The vast majority of our collisions are rear ends, where people just hit in because they're not paying attention. People are stopping in front of them and stuff like that. So a lot of it is driver stuff. We do look at stuff with engineering and everything. And with Oracle Road being a state highway, we have to get ADOT wrapped into that as well, not just the town. So that's some of the stuff that we work with there. But we do hit those areas with our high visibility enforcement, where we go out there and for lack of a better word, we hammer the area for a while. And people just see a lot of red and blue lights, just to kind of get everybody aware of, hey, you need to slow down and pay more attention in those areas. That's what we try to do. So, but as far as like the studies go, I mean, we can look at the data. But like I said, the vast majority of our things, it's usually driver inattention. And it's not necessarily roadway design. It's more just people are trying to do a lot of things that instead of just focusing on driving.
Thank you. And I am adding the comment, Mary, of studying intersections with incident rates to explore possible improvements, even if it's driver education. Robert, then Emily.
All right, I don't know how this could possibly even be enforced, but I just notice a lot when I'm driving, and it's a big source of annoyance for me. People will get into the turning lanes way too soon, and they're passing by people turning out parking lots and everything. That could be a very dangerous thing, because if you're not turning in there and you're just going straight in the turning lane and somebody's turning out, that could be a big cause for an accident. And I don't know how that could even be addressed, but this would probably be, I guess, the good forum to just bring it up in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we want to definitely hear what your concerns are related to traffic enforcement. And like I said, well, we can try to develop some goals or actions to help reduce it in the next 10 years. Emily?
Thanks. I was thinking about it, and I saw a few comments about people coming in the winter time. And I feel like the culture of our driving seems to shift when so many people come from out of town. Like we all kind of seem to agree. Like I live off of the roundabout on La Cañada. Well, right around the time when people start coming in from out of town, people don't know how to use the roundabout. And we get a lot of like people honking or sitting there waiting to see when their turn is to go. And I just wonder, you know, like if there's a way to better introduce out of towners to the culture of Oro Valley's driving when so many people come at one period of time, and then, you know, they leave, and then all of a sudden it's like, I can breathe. And yes, it's less busy, but also it just feels different on the road. I don't know if there's something that is already happening, but that was my thought.
Great, thank you. And I added that comment as well. Stephen?
Yeah, and I kind of put this on the comment that I posted there, but just wanted to kind of verbalize it a little bit too, is that having been here for almost 25 years, again, leading off saying that, you know, the police force, again, is very visible. I drive all over town, and no question Oro Valley is the most visible, you know, police by far. And that's a good thing. But there is a change, and I know there was one other comment that was made as well, where it used to be Oro Valley had the reputation, and I think it's kind of hanging on a little bit, that do not speed through Oro Valley. If you go even, you know, a mile over, you're going to get pulled over, which, you know, thankfully was never the truth really, but you know, it certainly has shifted pretty substantially. And I did have a conversation with you know, one of OVPD a while back, where they said that there's not as much staffing, I guess, for maybe a lack of a better word, to enforce, you know, just the traffic enforcement and the speeding. And again, we do live off of Tangerine, and again, drive all over town and run all over town. And the number of people that are speeding, not just 5 miles an hour over, but 10, 15 plus is substantial. And I don't think that reputation that Oro Valley had is, you know, really something that's lived up to anymore. Again, it's relative to other places, it's still phenomenal, but and again, we used to see a lot of the, you know, specific traffic enforcement with motorcycle police. And I understand having this conversation that's not a job a lot of people want, particularly in the summer. It's just downright miserable is what I was told, and I can understand that. But I do think there is room to kind of improve again upon that reputation. And, you know, again, I do see quite a few, you know, police out, and again, see the undercover, you know, officers, to the unmarked, I should say, rather, you know, cars, particularly right around my neighborhood, pulling people over. And again, I'm always cheering it on, but I do think that there is you know, some room for improvement for, you know, traffic enforcement within the town to kind of rebuild that reputation.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And I got your comment added as well. That we had the reputation and opportunity to gain it back, and that it's even speeders over 15. James and Sharon.
Sharon? Oh, James will go. I've noticed that there's a number of intersections, and one in particular that I travel on a number of times. Eastbound Tangerine, turning left onto Rancho Vistoso Boulevard up the hill, the yellow light is absurdly short. And part of these rear enders and people, going through the intersection on red is because the yellow lights are so short.
Thank you, James. I'll get that comment, and I will let you know we will be sharing your comments as well with the transportation group if they're applicable. So thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, and perhaps the chief or someone from our PD can help me with this question. I'm just wondering, because what Stephen is describing over 25 years, I can understand the change, but I also wonder how much of it is due to not just growth inside of Oro Valley, but growth outside, and so many of the commuters that are coming in through Oro Valley. And I notice it because I live on the north end, and boy, those folks that are coming out of Saddlebrook have lead feet. And they really are in a big old hurry to get where they want to go. So I'm just wondering if that's something that the PD is dealing with.
Mike, if you want to respond.
Yeah, I could speak to that. It's definitely something. I mean, there's 50,000 on average people that live here, but people travel through here, they come to here, and they leave here to go other places in the city to do their various types of business. So that 50,000 residents is just, it's not stable, right? We have a transient population of people who come here for fun, for work, for errands, things like that. We're dealing with that on so many levels, and that crosses subjects, if you will, because if you're comparing our traffic or our ability to do traffic enforcement, let's just say 20 years ago with what it is today, the same can be said for the way we police in regards to criminal activity, right? Calls for service have gone up. We're a very present, community-oriented policing organization. So we take the time to do those small things, and no call is too small. So there's quite a load put on officers to do all various levels and types of policing activity. And the same is true for the type of people who travel through here. Crime is the same way. People come to Oro Valley to commit crimes because it's a nice area, right? People really aren't leaving Oro Valley to do it somewhere else. They usually come here to try their hand at the nice stuff. So that takes up a lot of our time as well. I will say that to the comments I think Stephen said about the motorcycles. Yeah, it's hard to get people on motorcycles. We can't really force them because I don't think I would take too well to being forced to ride a motorcycle. They scare the living daylights out of me. But we've been reacting to that, obviously, as we continue to constantly staff our numbers as a police department. We're getting newer and younger officers earlier in their career, and that just doesn't seem to be an interest of theirs, is getting on motorcycles. So we've reacted to that by putting more unmarked people out there, trying to keep our traffic unit as robust as it once was, just deploying them differently. I really haven't seen so much of a degradation in the type of traffic specific enforcement that they can do. There's just a lot of volume requiring attention, if that makes sense. That's something we're constantly sort of balancing. And another way, sort of secondarily, that we responded to, obviously the need, because we know it too, is to remind our patrolmen, if you will, that they're not strictly call takers or call makers or proactive criminal people. If they've got some downtime, they can do traffic enforcement too. And that's actually very positively so taking root recently. I know Sergeant Morris probably has some of the more of the specifics, but I spoke to our patrol lieutenant a little bit before this meeting, and the amount of traffic contacts and enforcement that's being undertaken by officers in the black and white Shamus out there is the highest it's been in a long time, meaning that not only are they in neighborhoods or making contacts with businesses, taking the smallest of call to the biggest, most intricate call and taking people to jail, but in their spare time, in a 10-hour shift, they're making traffic contacts, which is huge. I think that was referenced before, by the wonderful lady who thanked us for the interaction we had with her daughter. It's the contact and the education go so far. It's not always a ticket. But people see us on the side of the roads too. They don't know what we're doing, if the person's getting a ticket or if that car was within relation to a crime. But we want to be present, and we've pushed that to all levels of our officers on the street to try to address some of these things, but it's definitely a work in progress.
And we'll keep them all we're going to keep them all on the board, because again, we're looking for, you know, things that we want to maintain, but also, as you said, there's always opportunities to improve. So even with the next 10 years, right, that we may not have specifically go hire or get motor cops, but what other ways can we make sure that reputation comes back, or is even, or at least the enforcement is still being seen. So appreciate that. Sergeant Marshall, did you want to, or more?
I
Sorry.
just had a quick question or quick clarification on some of the stuff there. We have seen a lot, like Mike was saying, we have had a transition recently with a lot of older officers retiring and leaving the profession, and a lot of new officers coming in. And there's a little transition area there. We probably have the most young officers that we've had since we were rookies, really. And so it has been good. And this year has been a really good evolution of that, because we actually did like 6,000 more traffic stops this last year in 2024 than we did in 2023. And that's a result of our young kids coming out, getting comfortable and doing what we need them to do. So we are working on that, trying to get that back.
Great, thank you. All right, before we move on to safe drivers, or some of you brought it up before that people are more distracted. There's more aggressiveness sometimes. I just want to make sure that everybody who wanted an opportunity to talk about traffic enforcement has had one. So if you still have a comment or thought on traffic enforcement, please make sure you raise your hand now. All right, let's move on to, we have safe drivers, and then also there were some specific comments about Oracle Road as well as Rancho Vistoso and Tangerine. But starting with drivers and what you guys are witnessing on the roadways. Let's see, we have a couple about aggressiveness, reckless driving, distracted driving. I know Sergeant Morris brought that up before about that's what's causing a lot of the traffic safety issues. But does anybody have anything they want to add, or if they put a comment on here they want to talk about, or any questions? Okay, what about, we'll keep moving on then. What about Oracle Road? So we had some specific comments about Oracle and McGee, Oracle and First, as well as Tangerine, even Linda Vista. So let's talk about what you guys are experiencing on Oracle Road. What are your, Rosa?
So I think of all the roads in Oro Valley, that's the one that scares me the most. I feel like it's a free for all on Oracle Road. I mean, I feel like, the other roads in Oro Valley are a little bit more manageable. So I'm surprised there aren't more accidents on Oracle Road, to be honest with you. That's the place where I would agree with people that I see the most like reckless driving. And I'm not sure it's Oro Valley residents, as you said, people passing through or people coming to Oro Valley or whatever. I don't know what can be done about it. I mean, because it's like you said, it's a visibility thing, and you can't be everywhere. But that's the road where I think, I feel I try to avoid it, to be honest with you. I avoid Oracle Road and I go up La Cañada. Everybody's nodding because it's more peaceful, to be on La Cañada than Oracle. So that's my comment there. I don't know what can be done about it, but I really feel like it's not just speeding, it's speeding, recklessly changing lanes, not being able to pull out onto Oracle Road if you don't have a light, even to go right, because the cars are coming so screaming fast in all the lanes. It backs up sometimes so that you can't pull out in certain intersections because it's already backed up at the light. Like it's classic Ina and McGee are like that all the time. So I don't know what can be done about it, but I really feel like Oracle is the road. If I were the police department and I was going to focus on a place, I would focus on that road. So that's my comments.
Margot?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I just wanted to, for context, say that, what I shared earlier is informed by the fact that I live on Oracle. And so like I can't avoid it at all. And it's often the only way to get to the places that I need to get with my kiddos. And so yeah, it seems like everyone has decided that like the speed limit's actually 60, it seems like, in a lot of places along Oracle. And so it's often like to be not speeding would be dangerous, it feels like. If I'm the one who's like actually going the speed limit that I'm supposed to be. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add, but just wanted to say that for context earlier. I generally feel pretty good in the other parts of Oro Valley. But yeah, living on Oracle and Linda Vista at this intersection is definitely interesting. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Right. Any other comments about Oracle Road? What about Rancho Vistoso and First and Tangerine? Seems like there are some concerns about that intersection. Rosa, then Margot.
So I'll comment on this one too. I don't know how there aren't more accidents coming out of Safeway, the people making the U-turn at Woodburn to go the other way. To me, I never realized how bad it was until I've been here a long time, and it's like, to me, it's amazing, but it's not a police thing as much as it's like, they have to redesign that area because it's just not, like I said, if they wanted to. I know that the issue was originally that shopping center, had it gone all the way across, Woodburn would have gone all the way across, and then maybe that exit wouldn't be where it is. But I know a lot of people are really worried about that whole U-turn situation and that, the Safeway exit. It just seems like no matter what we do, it's still a problem. So that's another area that I think safety is, people have a lot of concerns about safety. I actually saw a cyclist get hit there about 10 years ago, and it was the most frightening thing I've ever seen in my life. Like somebody came out of the Safeway shopping center and somebody was coming down, and I think he got hit by more than one person. It was like really scary. Like I said, that's a bad design. The back entrance to Safeway, I don't know what they were thinking, except that maybe they were going to continue that shopping center, and then it never happened. But that would be the one intersection, I think, that inside of our peaceful little Oro Valley that is a little bit crazy sometimes.
Thank you, Rosa. We'll do Maureen, then Bill, and then Pamela. So Maureen?
Yeah, Rosa, you mentioned the bicyclist. I'm just wondering, and ask the question, why there is no bike lane from Tangerine right up to Safeway? Because it continues, there's a bike lane on the downhill side coming down on Rancho Vistoso. There's a bike lane that continues after the Safeway, second Safeway entrance. And I just don't understand why, because I cycle there. I cycle the Safeway a lot. And that one little bit of it is just the scariest part. When I leave, I come out the other entrance and come out on Tangerine. And that's very simple for cycling. You come right into the bike lane. Generally, there might be some traffic that'll fight you for getting into the turning lane. But I just wonder why. Is there a reason? Was it deliberately left out, or was that, something that just happened?
I don't know the why, but I do know we heard that as well in the transportation committee meeting or resident working group meeting. So we do have it notated a couple times. So it's definitely something that could be that connectivity could be included in the general plan. So for looking into it in the future. Bill? Oh, you're muted, Bill.
I'm sorry, I came to the meeting late, so if you've already covered this, on number 12, where it talks about the
number of officers in traffic enforcement has dropped significantly. There's
Mhm.
almost no motorcycle police at all. Did you already cover that? And I'm just curious the facts of that.
The facts of the
In
amount
other
of
words, whether
number.
we have reduced the number of officers in traffic safety and or motors, and how come and how? Because one of the things when I moved here 19 years ago, I learned very quickly that there was a lot of trolling of the streets, especially Oracle, of course, but all of them, because the police department's theory was the people, especially people coming from the city or otherwise, saw a lot of police officers, they go do something, they do something else somewhere else, and or they would slow down. So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, so uh there is an answer. So maybe if I don't know, if Mike or Sergeant Morris, whoever wants to maybe kind of quickly summarize what was discussed when it comes to the amount of traffic officers and motor cops.
Yeah, so just real quick, Bill, the biggest thing there is there has been a lot of officers. It's not as desirable for officers to be on the motorcycles right now. We don't have a lot of interest from our, especially our newer, younger officers that really want to be on the wheel. It's really hot in the summer. It's really cold in the winter. While it has its uses, it's also very dangerous for our officers. We just had one that got hit really bad just a couple years ago, had to go through multiple surgeries. Whereas if they're in a car, more protected. So we still have our commitment to traffic, and I still have my traffic unit that's there. I just don't have as many on the bikes. And more of my traffic unit is in unmarked, so they're not as noticeable as the motorcycles were when you would see them on the side of the road. We're a little more sneaky. But we're still doing that. And like we said just before you got on there, our traffic stops went up like 6,000 last year. So we are getting back to that commitment. It's just not in the way it looked in the old days.
You have the budget for what you need in order to have a significant and effective traffic control. Is that right? You have the budget for that?
Yeah. Our budget's been there. I mean, we've had some transitions with staffing, with retirements and new kids getting up to speed and stuff like that. But I think my budget for traffic is pretty good. I can't really complain to the chief too much. She generally tends to give me what I need. So it's I don't have
Yeah, well,
I don't have
thank you,
any complaints.
Marshall.
You can ask Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
thanks, Marshall.
we'll talk about funding too. There were a fair amount of comments, but to get back to Rancho Vistoso and first, Emily.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I know I've heard about plans to add more development off of Woodburn and Rancho Vistoso. I can't remember if it's out on the corner or if it's closer to the fire department, but I just wanted to bring up that would add more traffic to that already concerning intersection. Personally, I'd really like to see a light there. My mom lives there. I travel to Painted Sky every day. It needs a light, in my opinion.
Thank you. And you're right, there is a vacant land right on the corner and then north of the Safeway. So, Sharon.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, Sharon, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Again, there we go. Okay. So I noticed earlier in the conversation that a significant number of folks that are in this meeting this evening have an interest in cycling and trails. And I think that is a big picture vision that we would have a trails master plan that could kind of deconflict some more of the bicycling interests from traffic. The more we can connect neighborhoods with bicycle paths. I would do more cycling to the grocery store if I could, but there really is no simple way of getting there without finding those little spots that are disconnected by bike paths. So I know that's one of the reasons why many of my friends live here, is because they love cycling here. And I think all of us would like to have more opportunities to do that where we're not conflicting with an automobile. That'd be great.
Thank you. And so as the mayor said in his introduction, there is it's called OV Trails Connect. It hasn't launched yet, so you guys are one of the first ones to hear about it, but it will be launching soon in actually a couple weeks. And it is focused on Oro Valley's trails as well as multi-use paths, which are those, they're adjacent to roads, but they are separate. And so that will be one component that we hope you'll all get involved, especially those of you who do walk, bike, or want to walk and bike more, or even hike. So I will definitely be sharing information to all the resident working group members once that launches. And then we also will be talking about trails through OV's Path Forward, as well as pedestrian and cyclist safety too. So hopefully hit it on a lot of fronts. All right, so any further comments on Rancho Vista Swinton first before we move on? Okay, our next column is school zones. So there were a couple comments, it looks like, from Mary and Emily about school zones and speed limits in school zones. Anybody want to, if either of you want to provide context to your comments, or if anybody wants to add anything, or if there's any questions about school zones? Bill, I'm not sure if your hand's raised from previously, but if you want to talk, you can unmute yourself. Nope. Okay, Emily?
Yeah, so I think that I've heard before that there is conflicting, Lehman wasn't supposed to be a school area, and so it didn't have a school zone in front of it because of how it was zoned. You know, kid's life is a kid's life, and it just really bothers me to see kids biking on the side of the street and not have a school zone right there with people going to work every morning. So I'm just wondering if there's something that we could do. I get it. It wasn't supposed to be a school place, but like it is, and there's kids there. So I'd really like to see those kids taken care of.
Great. We'll add that. Thank you. And then Margot added a comment in the chat that she'd also love to be able to bike cargo her kids from place to place to grocery stores instead of driving everywhere. And then so to keep voicing those priorities to have more connectivity. So streets. Okay, and then the last one related to traffic safety, the last column, there was an additional idea that didn't really fit in the other ones. I believe this was from Pamela, and it's just having, let's see, more share the road signs, speed monitors, orange flags on bike lanes, and bike lane changes sign. Pamela, if I may ask, can you give a little bit more information what you mean when you say orange flags on bike lane changing signs?
I guess, you know, as I drive around, I tend to look at the road based on being a cyclist. And a couple days ago, I think I was over going on Moore Road to let's see, La Cholla, and they closed down the bike lane, and they had, you know, some really nice signage that said bike lane closed, and they had orange flags that kind of pulled me out of my my monotonous zen of driving. And I saw that and I thought, oh, that was a great, you know, that was a great flag for me to pay attention. That maybe sometimes, you know, as if there are areas, I had raised my hand on the First and Tangerine going into that Safeway. I avoid turning left onto Rancho off Tangerine. I avoid it because I'm afraid of cars not looking at the cyclist going straight when they want to turn into the driveway for Safeway. So it's almost like just periodically in those hard places that are congested, putting up little flags or signs occasionally that stop people or slow people down to avoid the monotony of just driving and not paying attention.
Thank you, Pam, for that clarification. So I did add to your comment that for signage and flags for bike lanes when they're closed or when more attention is needed. And then also got your comment. I apologize, I didn't see your hand earlier, but that folks might avoid First and Tangerine because people aren't paying attention when they turn into Safeway.
You did see my hand, but I took it down because
Okay.
I think it was Marie maybe that had said what I wanted to say.
Got it. Thank you. Bill?
Perhaps, and this might really start in the schools, and maybe it's already there. I rode motorcycles for a long time and bikes still do. And we're invisible to drivers. We just are. We're not used to doing it. In other words, for every bicyclist, especially the young ones, to let them know that they can't be taking chances. They have to assume that the car doesn't see them so that they drive either on a motorcycle or a bike. It's very defensively. And because I see, the bike lanes that are between the right turn lanes and the straight ahead lanes, I don't know why we don't get killed there, once a week, because people don't look there. If they're not turning right, they're not looking over there anymore. So it's an education thing about what you need to be aware of in order to stay safe. And I don't know where all that comes from, but certainly all of us who have done that know that people don't see us.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For the interest of time, we're going to move on to our kind of more looking at crime and the ecosystem of crime. So first, and Bill, thank you. You brought some of this up earlier, but I want to kind of further the conversation. There were a fair amount of comments about funding for OVPD, but also training and attracting and retaining new officers. And just funding in general for public safety needs. So not even just OVPD. Does anybody want to, Bill?
Quickly, yeah, I just unmuted myself. I think that, that recently there was a magazine, national magazine, that said we were the #1 safest, wealthiest community in the country. The safety thing is a huge issue for attracting people to come into our town to live and or doing anything else, to go to the restaurants or whatever it is. That public safety needs to be, in my view, the #1 priority. That's why I asked about the budget on traffic control. It's important that not only for people's safety, but for the reputation of our town. It makes a huge difference. It's always there, but we need to keep it there and make sure that our police department is funded in the level that they really need. And I think we're pretty good at that, but I don't want us to let up on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I did capture your comment on the board. Other questions or discussion about funding and training? Okay. So when we're looking at the ecosystem to maintain a low crime, it does start with, doesn't start, but it includes courts, schools, businesses, and the entire community. So HOAs, residents, and then of course, our OVPD. So looking at courts, and I will say Judge Hazel is online with us this evening. So especially if you have any questions about the courts. Looks like we have a couple comments here, though, related to the courts and judges supporting law enforcement, and then a couple comments just about community support of OVPD. Anybody have any questions or want to add anything about the courts or general community support to help maintain a low crime rate? Rosa?
So can you explain, or can someone explain the court expansion that's going on, why we're doing it, and what we hope to achieve, like in a higher level of safety with it?
Sure. Judge Hazel, if you'd like to.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? I'm not muted, right?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you for the question. So the reason for the court expansion was our court building was extremely antiquated. We had no real lobby. We had no attorney meeting space. We didn't have good workspace, and we didn't have a prisoner holding area as well. So I put a presentation together for council with the help of obviously other city departments, mainly Public Works and the manager's office, and council adopted that $3.2 million project. And it was broken into now 4 phases. The first phase was our new part of the lobby, which has the attorney meeting rooms. Phase 2 is now almost done, which will make a better workspace and a much better open counter space for court users, and then a bigger lobby, more secure lobby. And then phase 3 will open up the back of the building to an exit, more secure exit. Phase 4 will be the prisoner holding area, which is called the Sally Port. And I don't know where that definition really comes from, but that's what they're always called. And that construction will start in April. So it'll end, I've been told, by the end of the fall. So the reason we did it, or that I proposed it, was that our facility was completely inadequate. It wasn't safe. Yes, we're a city court and we don't deal with like murder cases and stuff like that, but people come to court and get very upset. They get in confrontations with staff and police. And we didn't have a place to securely hold them. And so, and to keep everyone safe and have places for attorneys to meet with their clients and the prosecutors to do their job. So that was all spilling into the private work areas or the unsecure areas of the court, or the secure back areas of the court. So that is why we are doing that. And we're in the process of finishing it. And we're thankful for the support of council to approve that.
Great. Thank you, Judge Hazel. Rosa, did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Anything else on the courts? And I know community support will come up later, but what about, so schools, we got a lot of comments online that just support for school resource officers and then additional support programs. So I saw some things, I believe, about anti-bullying, peer relationships, peer counseling. If anybody wants to talk about how schools could be supported to help maintain a low crime rate. Bill?
Yeah, I'm because of the unfortunate incidents at schools around the country. Have we done something more or something different? Do we have more people doing things, more training, more school officers? In other words, have we, or did we feel we had enough to be sure to not just do the great things and where they relate to kids, and the kids can relate to them, and there's somebody on in the building who could react to some kind of a problem. So I just wondered how we reacted to those school incidents.
I would actually put that back to the group. So how do you guys think that the community is reacting to school safety? That's part of this discussion, is to kind of see what areas in school safety we can improve on, what's being done well. So I'll put that back to the group if anybody wants to chime in. Robert?
I mean, I do teach at a school. I'm at Basis Oro Valley Primary. I mean, I don't know what happened. I know a few years ago, the Oro Valley Police did our training programs, but now we do it all internal, their safety stuff. I mean, really, that's kind of like something, I mean, at least from my perspective, that it comes down to who's in charge of the school and what plans the schools have, I mean, it's kind of tricky to have, at least from my viewpoint, the whole town try to come up with a one-size-fits-all thing for all the schools. So it really just comes down to who the administrators are in the schools and what kind of procedures they have in place.
Great. I really appreciate your viewpoint, Robert, as a teacher. And Margot also was interested in the answer, so appreciated. Emily.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? I had to switch over back to my phone. So just like as a parent of kids who are in school, I've been really impressed with the resource officer, my experience at Painted Sky. I also know that the schools continuously or at least each summer kind of do a review of their safety. I guess my request would be that there be more funding from the city to do more continuous reviews of school safety, continuous checks to make sure that the standards that are there at the start of the year are upheld throughout the year. I was previously a teacher in my pre-mom life. And you get comfortable as the year goes on and you prop open doors and you just don't do as much as you did at the beginning safety trainings. And so I appreciate what I see, and I think I would love to see it more throughout the year, to continuously enforce and improve as we learn more over time.
So I added your comment as well for schools to help schools review and enforce their safety plans. All right. Not seeing any more hands raised. Let's move over. So the next part of our ecosystem, if you will, is businesses. So there were a fair amount of responses about sharing best practices, just outreach to businesses. The OVPD does have a strong business partnership, so something to maintain into the future, and crime prevention programs. Anybody want to speak about businesses, how they can be supported to stay safe and a low crime rate? I'll give everybody a moment to read through the comments. If not hearing anything yet, we could always go back though. I know there's a fair amount of comments to read through, but let's talk about community outreach and programs. Let's see, there's definitely appreciation for the dark house surveillance program. Some of the other outreach programs that are already being done, and continuing school and community outreach. Monthly newsletters, more effort to help OVPD because they can only be in so many places. So I think, Margot, you brought that up earlier as well. Things that civilians can do, especially when it comes to speeders and red light runners. Anything else for our community? How can the community help be supported to help maintain crime? And Margot, I appreciate you adding your comments in the chat. Others are welcome to do so, but it says schools taking mental health more seriously and offering more resources would help prevent a number of moderate to severe incidents, even if they are in the future. And please don't worry about backtracking, so appreciate the comment. So we'll get that added to the board. Anything anybody want to discuss on community outreach and programs? Or any questions or things to add? I'm gonna keep moving us on, and if I don't hear anything, but you're always welcome to raise your hand, and don't worry about backtracking. Our main goal is we want to make sure everybody's comments get on the board tonight. There were a couple comments about the demographics. I know we touched on that earlier. and the community characteristics that help with maintaining a low crime rate, policing and making sure it's not infringing on individual rights, and that security cameras may be of help for those businesses. Before we move out of maintaining a low crime rate in the ecosystem, are there any other comments people want to add to the board or discuss as a group? Yeah, Rosa?
So it actually came up today in the strategic planning, but cameras, I think, in more places, parks especially. I don't know how they would achieve it, but you know, Vistoso Trails, which is, you know, the old Vistoso golf course area, there were a lot of issues with people like coming and tearing up the ground with like, you know, three-wheelers and bikes and things. And it's such a big piece of property. I mean, you know, there's nobody really to see it happen. You know, you don't see who's doing it, you know. Also, like when the shade structures were destroyed at Steam Pump Ranch, you know, had we had cameras there, you know, because that was a real devastating situation. So I just think we live in an age where that's like the way to do it now. And so I would think that for safety in general, providing some budgetary money just for, you know, that kind of technology, you know, more cameras, I think is a really good idea.
Thank you, Rosa. Emily?
Yeah, so another thing about the Vistoso Trails is that parts of that area do not have cell phone service. And so, you know, it seems rather unsafe to me that you're kind of out there in the middle of it and you may not be able to get a cell phone call out if there were an incident. It would be really nice to see like cell phone service expanded there or Wi-Fi coverage so people could call out if they need help.
Great, thank you. Margot?
I was just wondering if anyone could speak to, I know in some of the reading materials it mentioned like fentanyl being an issue that is growing in the community. So I'm just wondering if anyone could speak to that. And I guess I would just add that as another, you know, I'd ask what citizens can do about the driving situation, the reckless drivers and red light runners, speeders, etc. But I'm also curious what citizens and also maybe businesses could do to be helpful in terms of, you know, hopefully having less fentanyl around, and also helping, I guess, in situations when like there's a safety issue related, whether that's like an overdose or an altercation or something. So
Thank you. If someone from OVPD wants to at least help answer, is fentanyl an issue in Oro Valley?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as widespread or as bad as other areas, but we see it, we have it, we catch it, we seize it, and we see its use, and quite often the negative effects of it. Really, it comes down to an educational thing. You can pick the drug of choice. This one is just pretty bad. As you have probably seen with the whole one pill can kill campaign that's out there. So we take a pretty strong stance against it, and we believe education is the best place to start. So that is a huge component of our SRO programs and our in-school education programs with the children, but also the staff and the administration of the schools. Officers, we're issued Narcan. We use it all the time. We've expanded that probably within the last year and a half to getting it in the schools for use by administration and staff. That's kind of like the worst meeting of two worlds, right? Where we don't want to have to use Narcan for an opioid issue, but at least we're preparing for if it is in that environment. Again, back to some of the other things we've talked about, right? It comes through Oro Valley. 77 is a state highway. It is an alternate trafficking route because sometimes I-10 gets hammered pretty good. And there's a lot of initiatives out there, but back to some of the things that Sergeant Morris and I had talked about. that's one of the things that our officers are tasked with, whether they're traffic officers or patrol officers or specialized units, targeted offender units. So there's a lot of training in that. There's a lot of awareness in that. There's a lot of things that they have to look for to get that stuff. It's important to them. They're very good and adept at it. It just never feels like enough. So, I mean, I don't have an answer to winning, let alone continuously fighting the war on drugs. But it's one we'll be doing. It takes training, it takes resources, it takes manpower, and it takes education on a public level, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you. Bill?
I know I'm talking about budgets, but this is again a place where if we should have world-class technology available to our department. And so I'm sure we do to a good degree, but I would like to underline the importance of that, both equipment and technology, and sometimes it's both at the same time, to be sure that, we stay where we are, if not get better at making sure that drug deals and other things are not overlooked or don't go on any more than we have to. So again, I just would underline the best technology for our officers.
Thank you. All right, so it's 7 o'clock. We have about 30 minutes left, so I do want to get us over to emergency preparedness. So starting off with fires and flooding. These are just general comments about both that flooding and fire can be are possible here, and that there were a fair amount of concern about wildfires, especially with what's happening elsewhere in the country. And is Mary still on? I do see a handful of questions. So Mary, you had some questions on here. If you'd unmute yourself, you want to kind of talk more about those, if you're available.
I guess mostly I wasn't very familiar with anything that Oro Valley had in place. So I just kind of wanted to know more about what their thoughts were for areas of vegetation and anything that they had to be a little more proactive and situations like with fires and so forth.
Thank you, Mary. And before I have Golden Ranch answer, that's a good segue, and these comments kind of all ran together. That's why it's a very large category, is under education and communication to residents. There were a fair amount of comments asking what is being done, how safe is Oro Valley from wildfires. So we can kind of talk about these two columns together. So it looks like Jen, you unmuted yourself if you want to provide some more information from Golden Ranch Fire.
Sure. So we have about 9 people in our fire prevention division, and we do about 5,000 inspections a year. And one of the types of inspections we do are wildfire risk assessments. So it is something we are actively doing. Even a couple weeks ago, we did do a risk assessment in one of the nature preserves in Oro Valley. We provide recommendations for the property owners. If there's code violations, we will write them up for those code violations, and then we return within 30 days to make sure that those violations are being taken care of. Another thing that we do, we work with other agencies. I'm not sure if anyone's heard about the Spirit Dog Project, but it started about a year ago. We're working with the state, and it's not specifically in Oro Valley, but it will affect Oro Valley. It's a project where we're clearing vegetation and making a fire break, starting in Catalina and moving south along the Catalina Mountains. That's a project that the state runs, and we're just assisting because it's in our fire district. So we also have inspectors going out and giving information on Firewise recommendations. So anytime a resident calls, they can ask us or request a wildfire assessment for their property, and we'll go out there and give them the recommendations per Firewise.
Thanks. So Mary, did that help answer some of your questions, or if you have more?
I guess that really did. I was interested to hear what was happening, and then I guess also what the town and maybe like the residents in the town could do to support and just be more aware.
And I'll add that to the board. Definitely, there were some comments about making sure that there's more information possibly, or promotion of information available to residents. So that could definitely end up being in the general plan. Rosa?
So I have some fire questions, comments. So before the fire in Hawaii and then again in California, I never considered wind as a kind of an element that, you know, could accelerate and, you know, create a condition that we hadn't seen before. I do live on the old Vistosa golf course, and right now it's, I would call the fire risk pretty tame because everything is dead and mowed down pretty low to the ground. But what concerns me is I've been reading a lot about like the new recommendations to keep your house safe, and I was wondering if you had any input on that. Like, for example, one of the things I read was palm trees are like the worst thing to plant next to your house, and I never considered that like a palm tree. It's a tropical, right? You know, and apparently it's like a fire stick. And not having any trees within 5 feet of your house. So like I'm already looking at an olive tree that I'm going to trim back. But I mean, are you looking at any different like types of recommendations? Just because, I mean, we don't look at it that way, but vegetation next to your house is a way to ignite your house, you know?
So I can go over a little bit of what causes wildfires and the differences between us and Oro Valley and California that might help out. So when we're talking about wildfire, there's 3 topics that we're looking at that contribute to those fires being aggressive. And that, like you mentioned, wind. So it's weather, it's topography, and it's fuel load. So those fires that are happening in California, they're absolutely horrific. But when it comes to the weather, topography, and fuel load, they have so much against them that we don't have here. So like you mentioned, the wind, they have wind speeds commonly in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70 mile an hours, which does not happen here. They also have steep terrain, which in Oro Valley, like, is relatively flat. Obviously the Catalina Mountains and Mount Lemmon is not flat, but town of Oro Valley is flat. And then the fuel load. So fuel load, there's low, medium, high, and extra high fuel loads. A high fuel load would be like a pine forest where you have trees that are touching, and what happens is the fire goes up the tree, the crown of the tree catches on fire, and then the fire moves through the tree crowns and potentially isn't even moving on the ground. And then you have the 70 mile an hour winds pushing the fire through the trees, which is a little bit similar to why a palm tree is so dangerous. It's because it is like a fire stick, and then at the top you have that heavier fuel load, but it's also a light, as far as weight, it's a light fuel load that breaks away easily and the embers float around. One reason why you still might be in good shape compared to California is the building construction of your house. So when we look at fire hazards and your fire hazard risk rating, we look at building construction. So most likely you have a tile roof, stucco siding. So if you did have that palm tree catch on fire next to your house and an ember landed on your roof, your house won't catch on fire if you have a tile roof. Where in California, there's a lot of wood shingled houses. So you got your tile roof, you got your stucco siding, Some Firewise recommendations: within 5 feet of your house, you don't want any trees touching your actual house. And then they move out to 5 to 30 feet, where you want trees to be at least 18 feet apart because you don't want the tree crowns touching. And then once you get out to 30 feet from your house, the trees can be 9 feet apart. But some other factors that we have here that it is different than California, majority of our power lines are underground. So when you have an above ground power line and 70-mile-an-hour winds and a power line goes down, it will create sparks and catch vegetation on fire. But majority of our electric utilities here in Oro Valley are underground. We also have the asphalt roads, at least 20 feet wide, cul-de-sac turnarounds, good what we call fire flow. So fire flow for us is just water from a hydrant. In our fire district, we have about 5,000 hydrants. We have 11 different water purveyors. Oro Valley has a great supply of water, great pressure. If you drive around, you'll notice the hydrant caps are painted different colors. Majority of the hydrants in Oro Valley are green, which means they provide at least 1,000 gallons per minute of water. Blue cap would be over 1,500 gallons. If you see a red cap, that's only 500 gallons, and then the orange cap is 1,000 gallons. Minimum required fire flow for residential properties is 1,000 gallons per minute. So with our access, our fire flow, the building construction, underground utilities, relatively flat terrain, we do have a low fuel load, some medium, like in the nature preserve in Rancho Vista. So there's some pockets of medium fuel loads, but they're surrounded by low fuel loads, like very spotty vegetation, where if one section of plants catch on fire, it will get to a point where it's dirt again. So what's happening in California is terrible. It's highly unlikely that would ever happen here. Even though I say that, we still do things like the wildfire risk assessments, we're the Spirit Dog Project, to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep the residents as safe as possible, and we'll come out and give Firewise recommendations to anyone who asks.
Thank you, Jen. So that's a lot of great information. So I want to pose something in the group in terms of, what can we do for the future to help get this information out. So, most people, the whole town's not here, right? There's 20 of us. So what methods do you think the town should use to help get more of this information out to the community, especially when there's a disaster like we see in California and we know it's on the forefront of folks' minds? I do see some suggestions that were made in the comments, and that's like sending out things with the water bills. I saw social media, but what other ways do you think the town can help get this information out to folks? Or what do you use to get information? Where do you turn when you're trying to find out things like this? Robert?
Probably speak with regards to the fires and stuff. When we had the Bighorn fire 5 years ago now, I was right across from an evacuation zone. So I actually had left because I thought that they were going to get ready to evacuate where I was, to just try to avoid any kind of mass exodus. But I was checking all of the local news, and it was their websites just to see what the status was of a lot of things, and it was not really that helpful because it was not really updated that well. So I'm not really too sure. I know that at the beginning of the meeting, there was something along the lines of Code Red mentioned. I don't know if that is for like any procedures with the fire safety or the evacuations or anything related to such. But I think would be helpful after just going through all of that a few years ago would be to have some kind of central website or app or something that could give updates throughout the community on any kind of evacuations or warnings or whatever.
Great, thank you. I do know, yeah, Golder does have a lot of information on their website. So these are, in addition, what even the town from the town's website could be doing, or the town's marketing efforts, promotion efforts. And then also in emergency preparedness, there were comments, and Robert, that's a good kind of segue, is about the alerting system. Having interactive road warning signs. Do we need interactive road warning signs? I don't think Mike is on the call, but are there other thoughts or ideas or discussion for how to better alert the community if there is a disaster emergency? Emily?
Yeah, is there like, say there was a fire impending and I'm sleeping in my bed, like, is there a way to alert me currently from the city?
I'll
I
actually
don't know.
defer to Golder if what you guys use to.
So there is, so like with the Bighorn fire, we work with the State Department of Forestry and Fire Management. They have their Ready, Set, Go program. So they will put communities on a ready status if they're about to be evacuated. They'll move them up to set if it's getting closer, and then they'll have go. They will do some advertisement in terms of people going around the neighborhoods, but a lot of that is done online through their website. We will attempt to, it gets a little bit sticky because we don't want to put out our own warnings and our own ready, set, go, or whatever it may be, and conflict with something that the state's doing. So what we try to do is amplify their message. So I don't know if that answers your question, Emily.
Yeah, I guess I just like, I live up in Rancho Vistoso and I live really close to like a very deserty area. So in my mind is always like, if there was a wildfire right there and I'm sleeping in my bed, not checking the internet, like, how would I know that I'm not safe anymore? Or any sort of like emergency situation. We don't have tornado sirens, I assume. So what is our...
So with something like that, typically what we would do is form a joint command with OVPD, and we would ask for OVPD's assistance in helping to evacuate certain neighborhoods. So that would be our first approach as far as Golder Ranch, if it wasn't something that was handled by the Department of Forestry and Fire Management.
And Mike, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just to echo what Chief Perry was saying is, if it's imminent and the response is ongoing and it's close, that joint command through the incident command structure is that's where cops are gonna come knocking on your door, and we've done it. We can do it very easily, that sort of thing. If it's a mass thing, we have a couple other things. Code Red was alluded to. It's a way we can send out messages to people if they've signed up for things. And we have a reverse 911 system where we can send out geographically specific alerts to people. Those are sort of the things that we've carried on over the years that have had pretty good effect.
Great, thank you. Okay, then also in emergency preparedness, some of the comments were related to partnerships. So partnering with Pima County, especially when it comes to flooding and drainage ways. They are responsible for a lot of the bigger ones in town. And then even the town working closely with Golder Ranch to for wildfires. So anything else anybody wants to discuss for emergency preparedness, or questions you may have, or concerns that we can get on the board? And if, especially for anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak tonight, you're also welcome to add your comment into the chat if you may not feel comfortable unmuting yourself. Or if you're tied up with children and dinner. We understand that, or anything else. Chief Barry?
Yeah, Melanie, just one thing that I wanted to say, there was a question about what property owners can do or citizens can do to help with wildfire mitigation. And Jen mentioned it somewhat, but HOAs teaming up with Firewise through the Department of Forestry and Fire Management is one of the prime ways that our communities can help drive some of that wildfire protection. It's a Firewise is a program that's run by neighborhoods, by HOAs. So it does take community involvement, but it is the best way to help us mitigate the spread of wildfire through neighborhoods for sure.
Great, thank you. All right. So with relations to public safety, we covered a lot tonight. What to maintain, what's most valued, traffic safety, just the ecosystem for maintaining crime, and then emergency preparedness. I just want to check in. Does anybody have any other things they want to discuss with related to public safety? So it doesn't just have to be those 3 areas. Is there anything else you want to discuss or want to comment on as it relates to public safety? Rosa.
So the recent graffiti incident in Rancho Vistoso, I was sad to see that actually. When I was with a reporter doing a story on the Old Vistoso golf course, she was from Phoenix, and she commented on the fact that all those underpasses on Vistoso trails don't have any graffiti like all over the inside walls. And she couldn't believe it because she said it wouldn't be like that, in some of the suburbs of Phoenix. Do we have any prevention programs or any programs to make sure that doesn't become an exciting thing to do? Because like what I've always heard is when graffiti starts, that's when it takes off because, it's a juvenile thing. Do we have any information on what caused the incidences that we had and what we might be able to do about it? Because it would be really a shame if that started happening here in Oro Valley.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to talk about that or?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head on how unique that is. It is mostly a juvenile problem. We can tell kids and tell people not to do all kinds of things. It doesn't always mean that they listen. So hopefully parents are paying attention. But really what it boils down to is the relationship that we have with our community as a police agency. The culture of our officers and the type of policing we do is we want to strive to develop those relationships with individuals, neighborhoods, businesses, all that stuff, so that if they talk to us about the small things, even if they're not even crime, if they talk to us or pick our brain or bring something to our attention, that they'll contact us for the big things, right? And obviously there's things that are much larger issues than graffiti, but what we encourage is that connectivity and that communication, right? And if in the unfortunate incident that doesn't work or something pops up, we'll find it. We will. I don't even know if you guys remember the goof thing. We were struck by a serial graffiti guy for a number of years who'd hit places all over the state because of the notoriety of his tagger name, Goof, and we caught him. And then a whole bunch of people were happy that we had our hooks in them because they wanted a piece of it too. But yeah, it might take some time. But again, to that relationship that we build with the community and the culture that we are striving and continuously building in every new officer and encouraging throughout their career is that stay involved. You work for 10 hours, find a way to serve for that whole 10 hours, and nothing is too small. And then, tell kids don't to spray paint things, please.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, just real quick on the Firewise there for Golden Ranch. You mentioned HOAs and being, kind of collaborating with them. Is that something Golden Ranch is proactive with reaching out to HOAs, particularly ones that do back up? I would assume, the biggest value there is backing up to washes that are controlled by the HOAs where you might have a more dense, vegetation corridor there. Is that something Golden Ranch is reaching out, or should there be messaging from Oro Valley to the HOAs to, make that collaboration happen?
The program is actually run through the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, so we don't actually administer the program. We can put people in contact with them for sure. We try to put out information, particularly on our social media. We've got some on our website. We're sending out, particularly in light of the California fires, a new pamphlet talking about wild and urban interface risk to some of the HOAs and things of that nature. So it's a work in progress. We don't necessarily have contacts with every single HOA. The ones we have, we try to reach out to, and we do quite a bit with other community groups in terms of education in that realm.
Okay, and I got that comment on the board, Stephen. Jen?
Can I add, I just want to add to that. I also wanted to mention that even though we're not directly reaching out to HOAs and starting that communication in our fire prevention office, we're in contact with HOAs pretty much every week because they're reaching out to us. So there are a lot of like HOA presidents and HOA members or even residents affiliated with certain HOAs that they're calling us, asking us to do presentations. I believe we did a presentation today in Saddlebrook with their HOA, but it's definitely a weekly thing where we're in almost constant communication with different HOAs because they're reaching out to us.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple more minutes. I do want to mention that Chief Perry did put a link to the Firewise guidelines, it looks like, in the chat. So if you're interested in that, please click on the chat icon and you can see that message. I do have, let's see, one parking lot question that we will follow up on, and that was from Maureen of why aren't there bike lanes north of Tangerine where that section between are on First, but between Tangerine and Safeway. Were there other questions that anybody had that you need us to follow up on? Or if I missed them, please let me know.
It's actually on Rancho Vistoso at that point. It's no longer First, but it is that stretch from Tangerine up to Safeway that there is no bike lane. And cars do not always appreciate a bicyclist being there, even though bicyclists have full right of way, and legal right to be there, but nevertheless, it's a conflict point.
Great, thank you, Maureen. And I wrote it down a lot better, clearer this time. So we will follow up with everyone on that. Not hearing anything. I do want to just thank you all for the time this evening. We got through a lot, and all of your comments will really help formulate those goals, policies, and actions. So we will meet again in 2 weeks. That's the February 27th. Yes, February 27th. And we'll kind of go through the draft goals, policies, and actions, our main, and that's where we'll start building consensus to make sure we heard you right and it's meeting the intent of what you guys told us, but also what we heard last year. So with that, I just want to thank everyone and hope you all have a good night.